This higher for longer, Dr. Yardeni,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that EMs at large will be relatively less attractive until rates turn.
Well, the interesting thing about higher for longer is it's widely viewed as a negative, implying that inflation is going to stay higher for longer, and therefore the Fed is going to have to keep interest rates higher for longer. But the way I look at it, maybe it's because I tend to be an optimist about things. I try to be realistic, but these days, being an optimist is a contrarian view, as you know. Maybe it's been that way for a while. But my view is higher for longer also means that the economy is actually doing pretty well. The U.S. economy before the great financial crisis, we had this new abnormal period between the great financial crisis and the great virus crisis, where the Federal Reserve and other central banks were trying to raise inflation to 2%. They were lowering interest rates to historical lows. We're actually back to yields where they were, to interest rates where they were before this period, before the great financial crisis, 2003, 2007. The 10-year bond yield was 4.5% to 5%, which is where it is right now. And the economy was able to withstand that kind of level, and it's doing it again. So higher for longer has a positive implication that the economy may actually be resilient. We've recently gotten some strong employment numbers, and I wrote a piece called "Consumers Hotter for Longer." Remember, at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of recession talk. I wasn't in that camp. So the other part of it is, I think inflation is turning out to be transitory, and I think higher for longer may not be the case. That we may see, in fact, 4 federal funds rate cuts next year instead of the 2 that the Fed now is talking about. So things can change. And I think what will change is, I think there'll be a perception that, inflation really isn't as much of a problem as we thought. And meanwhile, the economy is doing well. And I think the big surprise in the US, at least, is going to be a return of productivity growth, because we need it to offset the shortage of labor.